Please, everyone, let's give a warm welcome to Sam Rivera.
How you doing? It actually happened last night on the elevator on the way up. It was great. It was really cool. I said, how you doing? And he said, how you enjoying Texas? And I'm like, what are you doing, bro? It's just hello. But he was very sweet, and his wife, I don't know if they might be in here. They should be in here. They were very nice. And then they followed me to my room, but said, are you here? Is that couple in here? Maybe I scared you, I don't know. But how you doing? For us, that's like good morning, hello, all of it. Just don't respond back. Just nod your head. I will say it's like I met some really nice people down here. You know, really sweet, kind-hearted people. Feel very welcomed, even with my New York accent. I'll start off with, talking about who I am briefly. Daka, Sam Rivera, and I say Seneco Kakona to everyone in this room. I am Sam Rivera, and in my Taino language, I wish abundant blessings to everyone in this space and in this room. And I ask you to always honor the native people who built this land and the enslaved Africans who worked to really build it. It's truly a blessing to be here. It really is. I'm excited to be here. I have what I consider family, my brother Jaime and his wonderful daughter, Linz. I get emotional because my hero is my mom, who is currently really struggling with Alzheimer's. So it's a challenging time for me. And I do this work because of my mom. She was 42 years, she was a nurse in New York City. And that's a lot, especially in New York City. And I'm definitely a proud mama's boy. No problem admitting that. And I would go to the hospital to visit her all the time. And I remember going when she was working in the emergency room. I grew up on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And back then, drugs were really about every day of our lives. And she was working with this guy who was using drugs. And he was there every day. And I said to her, Mom, why do you keep helping this guy? He doesn't care about himself. And she said, my job is to help him until he's ready to help himself. And that is really what I carried in my career. And in my career, and what we do at OnPoint, is we love on people until they're ready to love on themselves. And really understanding why people use and where that comes from. Maybe some of us in this room used to have fun. Our participants use to self-medicate pain, trauma, and mental health conditions, for the most part. We've been running OPCs for over 2 years. I've yet to have a participant come in the room and use and say, oh, I feel great. I'm nice and high. What they say when they walk into the room is, I need to get well. I'm in pain. So it's been interesting, first day here, because we had this amazing session after the excellent keynote yesterday morning, and talking about including people and working with people. And then I went to another session where a young man expressed his concerns about working with police, which is a real concern. And a number of people in the room were basically wanting to throw him out of the room. So I don't know how we transition from a session that says we want to be inclusive and work with people, and then go in another room, and when the young man expresses his pain and maybe his experience with police, we want to throw him out of the room. So we want to figure out, how do we work with both, right? And too many times we talk about what's so different, what our issues are, what's so different about us, instead of what do we have in common? What brings us to this work? How do we move this madness in this world we've been living in to support people where they truly are? So my title is, We Are the Medicine, and sort of where it started. I want to give you a brief history. So it said I've been doing this work 31 years. I was like 11 or something when I started, or 12, something like that. I think it was 10 and a half, but it's actually 32 years this year. But so I was doing HIV work. I was in the work of HIV. I was a member of ACT UP, really groomed me to be who I am today. If you don't know ACT UP, get on your phone. As we say in Puerto Rican, googlealo. It just means Google it. Puerto Ricans think Google is the English word for search. So you can search it, ACT UP, change this world. ACT UP brought people together in a loving way to represent people who weren't represented, who were dehumanized for who they are, not their behaviors. Let's watch our language. So I would work during the day and then go home and then change and go into shooting galleries to clean syringes out of buckets with bleach. And a number of us were doing this, and we were supporting people in that loving way, not realizing we were starting this thing called harm reduction. So I ask those of you who are in harm reduction, who are truly in harm reduction, because we have a lot of harm reduction light going on, like Splendor harm reduction. You know, we have a number of people like starting to talk about harm reduction, and they don't really understand how deep that word is and what it means to us. But that was the beginning of harm reduction. It was about loving these folks who were treated differently simply because of who they are. And we're back here again, watching this happen again and again. And so I look back to those days. They were very different. They were amazing. They were painful. Funerals every week, sometimes twice a day. We were losing so many people. And at the same time, we were creating this new way of blessing and taking care of people. We talk about, I like to say, we are the medicine. And in Native culture, medicine is a big word for us. And oftentimes, we've also had to deal with having people tell us that our medicine is our drugs. Can you imagine that? What we do in ceremony to heal and get well, we have created these categories that make our medicine drugs. And we've been through that so many times. Big Pharma is allowed to do it differently, right? So maybe they should come to a powwow or some ayahuasca ceremony and we'll help them create a medicine they can put their name on. And I don't mean that at all. So on 11/30/2021, we opened the first 2 OPCs in the United States. You're supposed to clap. November 30th, 2021, we opened the first 2 overdose prevention centers in the United States. And it was crazy. Can I curse a little bit? It was crazy. It was intense. It was serious. It was beautiful. It was dangerous, you know? And we had we had an idea of what we were doing for our people, because that's what it's all about. It has nothing to do with us. It's about our participants. What we knew is when we opened, we didn't open. OnPoint didn't open by ourselves. Too many lives lost. Too many people hurt by this process. You know, they say there's a war on drugs in this country. There is no war on drugs in this country. There is a war on drug users. In fact, there's a war on specific drug users, black, brown, and poor white folks. Let's follow the bouncing ball. Specific drugs are allowed to enter specific neighborhoods. Those people use and sell those drugs, and then they're punished for doing so. That's what they call the drug war in this country. There is no drug war. Let's learn that. So when you hear people say, no more drug war, they're not talking about the one that the federal government likes to talk about. They're talking about the one we experience on the ground and our beautiful people have to fight through every day. When we opened the OPC, at every booth, we put a candle and we let it stay there for all those who couldn't use the OPC, who weren't able to be there and stay alive in our program and be treated with humanity and love. You know, in our booth, we have these big mirrors. It's one of my favorite things to watch. We have these big mirrors where we watch people after they use to see if they're overdosing. And I remember when we first opened, a lot of people, especially women, didn't want to look at the mirrors. They didn't want to look at themselves. They would put things in the way. They didn't like the way they look. Harm reduction is about this. Those same women sit there and put makeup on the same mirror. They see themselves. They love themselves. They're building a relationship with the woman they were ashamed of looking at in that mirror just months before. In that room, there's community. When people use, and when our people use, they have to hide. It's quick. They have to get it done really quickly and hide from people in an alley, in a park, in a bathroom. With us, they get to relax and use safely. We are blessed for, they allow us to work with them. We're blessed because they allow us to work with them. It is a privilege to be able to provide those services for them. We get in this room. For a long time, I thanked Will Smith for slapping Chris Rock. It's real, I'm not kidding, it's real. Not because he did it, but because in the room, he participated in the reduction of drug use. He participated in the reduction of drug use in the room because when someone comes in, they tell us what they're using, how much they're using, how they're using it, right? So they come in the room and they say, I'm using 2 bags, I'm injecting, so on. And then they use their first bag, they're chilling, everything's good, and then a conversation comes up. Why did he smack him? And everybody starts giving their opinion, and they're gonna use their second bag, and I'm like, if I use the second bag, I won't be able to give my opinion, and my opinion matters, so I'm gonna use this later and express why. And those are things, sports, politics, all kinds of things like that, participate in the reduction of drug use. Your perceptions of why and how people use is very different from the experience we have. Very, very different. In that room, they're loved on, they're seen, they're called by their name. We have an anonymous program. Anonymous. 100% of our participants give us their names. 100%. So we don't have Mickey Mouses and all those weird names, and the Disney characters. We have real people. The pain in that oftentimes, which is very painful for us, is when, and if someone dies in the community, we tend to be the ones that go identify the body. And we know their names. I want to briefly talk about what happens during an overdose in the room. So, someone uses, they go into an overdose. We're responding within seconds. This is not in the community where you're pumping tons and tons of milligrams into the person. We respond within seconds. During that response, the experience for them is very different. In the community, when someone overdoses, cameras come out, phones come out, people record them, people call them out of their name, people refer to them as junkie and bum and look at you and make all these comments. In our room, when people overdose, they're loved. We know their name, we call them by their name. I have literally seen people respond during an overdose just because someone called their name. You imagine that? I've seen people respond because we know their nickname. And I am truly blessed to have the most amazing team. And I know a lot of you think that about your staff, and I respect that. I'll challenge anybody any day. The most amazing team on this planet. We just love people in a way that's, it's immeasurable, man. It's beautiful. And thank you, Lucas, for coming to visit and seeing what we do and how we do it. Again, OnPoint is one organization doing this. We have many organizations who've been doing it with us. Not too many before us. We've been around a long time. But we have partners in this work. And it's important to embrace them too, man. I think about why I came back. When I came back to harm reduction, I didn't want to, by the way. And when I came back, I remember talking to Jeremy from Vocal, and I said, Jeremy, I'm going to do this a little different, man. And it was simultaneous when my elders in my native community told me I wasn't a good warrior, and I was confused. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm a great warrior. I'm always fighting. I'm ready to fight. And they said, no, that's not a good warrior. A good warrior does everything first and fights last. And it's okay to fight, but we have to get there. Love first, find alternatives, and then if you have to fight, let's fight. And so I brought that into the work, and I said, I'm not going to get in people's faces like I used to, and believe me, we needed to. In the early days of ACT UP, even not too many years ago, we had to scream and get in your face because you couldn't hear us, so you chose not to hear us. You didn't want to respect folks who use. You looked at them as less. It's interesting to me how when people find recovery, they become like this like guru of something. You know, and it's also interesting to me that there are providers who believe that they themselves got someone to stop using. That's adorable. You know, I've seen providers get up at a graduation, like a ceremony, and go, if it wasn't for me, Bill would have still been using. And I'm like, oh shit. Like, you know, you have any lotto numbers, anything you want to share, you know? I don't get it. And we have to respect the person as the one who's doing it. We can offer them everything we want, but it's on them when they're ready and they're willing to take this journey with you. And you have to be patient, right? We all have all these different experiences, and we want to honor where people are coming from. It's not your journey. And if you had a journey, it doesn't match anyway. If we share the same bag, it's different, right? My history comes into play during those times. I'm monitoring my time. I'm doing good, right? Good, okay. I thought you guys were slow here, so I could be a little easy. I don't mean like slow, I mean like, that might sound a little off. You know, I want to share a quick story. When I came out of prison, and I heard people talk about criminal justice systems, I want to remind people what it is and what it was created to do. Prisons were called penitentiaries. Do people know why? You're not in your head, but I swear if I pick on you, you'll probably screw up. Prisons were called penitentiaries because the Quakers created them in a way so you can go in and do penance and get well. And the thinking was that you couldn't survive in society. We're going to put you in a system, really sick system, but at the time they thought they were coming from a good place. And then when you got in the system, you were supposed to receive everything in the healthiest way possible that you couldn't accomplish on the outside. Instead, in this country, prison is used as a way to punish you. If some of you saw right now, this morning there was a news piece and it said, they're bringing computers into prison. You'd be texting your friends saying, listen to this nonsense, right? 95% of people who enter the prison system come home. Do you want them to come home with no education and angrier than they went in? I did that, right? We have to look at what that journey's like. If you decide to have this really sick system and incarcerate people, then it's your responsibility to take care of them, not put them in. We have to fight for wellness in prison. Can you imagine that? We have to fight. It's modern day slavery. It's a real, true system. There are studies out there that talk about schools in certain neighborhoods and the percentage of people they bring to the prison system. It's cattle. You guys understand cattle, right? We're in Texas. And I got to see real longhorns. And I screamed like a kid. We were in the car. I'm like, oh shit, that's a longhorn, man. And I found out from a rancher. Hold on. Let me join you guys in how I'm living in Texas these days. I can't do that, bro. I can't yee-haw, but I could put on and say, how you doing? So my brother Jaime yesterday took me out and we had a blast. We went shopping and I met a rancher, like a real freaking rancher. Like this dude's a real cowboy, man, right? And he showed us a ton, a longhorn that weighed a ton. I mean, it wasn't in the store now, come on. But he showed us a photo and he said that each, what is it? Horn. 6 foot long, what the hell do you call it, a horn? Like a horn? Long horn, each side was 6 foot long. And he's my new buddy. I'm coming back to visit him, and even though he didn't really invite me to his piece, but we're just gonna go, right? I mean, we're gonna crash. But yeah, I got this groovy hat now, like I'm going back home with a little country in me. I'm ready, man. So where was I? Where the hell was I, Britt? You guys know Brittany, go to her session. She's my boss over there, Brittany. So yeah, when we look at this system where we treat people certain ways, I want you to think about that when you create programs. You know, one of the things I look at is I want you Holy cow, I'm looking at myself. The guy told me it's not supposed to go down, but I disagree. This would be low. Okay, all right. When we look at these systems, think about how you create them and how you truly support the people in those systems, right? Even yesterday, when a young man shared this thing, immediately we come with this punitive response. Can you imagine every program you run has tons of punitive responses? It's like, if you don't do this, you don't get that. So as an example, we have a food program. And I don't know who created the 3 meals a day. It had to be some skinny European person. Right? I don't know where it came from, but it doesn't really work for black and brown folks. And if you go to like any village in Africa and you get there, let's say lunch was noon, and you get there at 1 and you say, oh, they're not gonna say, you missed lunch, come back for dinner. They're gonna say, have a seat, we're gonna feed you. So at OnPoint, we do the same. We do have 3 meals, but in between that, if someone comes in and they're hungry, we feed them. If someone's leaving for the day and they wanna take food with them, we give them food. People use food as a punitive tool. Can you imagine that? We have women's shelters throughout this country who, when women leave the shelter to go out and spend time with their children trying to reunite, they almost never make it back for dinner. So they don't eat every night. And there are people who go home every night who run those places that think it's okay. Just think about that, right? Can you imagine that when you talk to one of your participants, not your consumers, please get rid of that one, please. When you talk to your participants, if you could just take a moment and imagine what they're experiencing. When a participant comes to you and they're angry and they curse you out, they're not talking to you, you just happen to be there. They would have did it to any one of us, they're in pain. If we can start looking at it that way, it'll be a little different in our work, right? We create these things and we tap ourselves on the back and we're superheroes. And like when I was a case manager, I was the best ever. I don't know if you looked it up. Look it up. I was like super case manager of the year, like a few years running. I had a cape and everything. And I remember one of my first big lessons in the work is I took this guy. He was, he was relapsing. Right? He never stopped using, relapsing. And so I took him to, because I'm a superhero. I had my cape, I put him in my car, and I drove him to his favorite counselor. The dude got me. I was going for the whole thing. I was hook, line, and sinker. That's a Texas thing, right? Hook, line, and sinker. Okay. That dog won't hunt. I'm getting it. I'm on my way. So I drive him out to his favorite counselor all the way out in the military base, and he spends the day. Because I believe, because I did that, he won't use because I drove him, right? I'm the superhero counselor, right? So I take him out there. Next day, he comes in. I come back. I'm telling everybody all this great stuff I did, like I'm some great something. And the next day, he used. And I walked into our meeting and said, I can't believe he did that to me. Ooh, boy. And 2 of my elder staff gave me a beating. Like the audacity for me to believe he did it to me. Right? The audacity for me to believe I was that damn important, that it wasn't about him. Somehow I made it about me. And a lot of you do that, even if you don't say it out loud. I'm talking to you in this way with love now. I'm not judging you. We used to say back in the day, if your belly's flipping, it's okay. If I'm saying some things that make you a little bit like, oh God, he's talking about me, it's okay. After today, it's not okay. But for right now, up to today, you could say, okay, I made some mistakes, I'm gonna work on this. But up to today, we're gonna give you a little bit of a break. But I ask you to understand and take a moment to understand your participants differently, right? This process and this work that we do is something you should be honored to do. Right? You shouldn't be in this work if it doesn't drive you. I've spoken at universities all over this country. I've never seen a class called passion because you can't teach it. You have it or you don't. So if you're in this work in a transactional way, then, you can resign. It's all right. We'll accept your resignation. And clap for that one, damn it. I want to make sure I give time for Lindsay and I to chat a little, and I want to have some questions from the audience, of course. I want to briefly go over a list. Someone asked me recently, can you say a few words about OPCs? And I took it literally. So I said, okay, I'll say a few words about OPCs are legal. You heard that? I used to, and harm reductionists used to make a mistake and say, what we're doing is illegal. For the past almost 6 months, we've had attorneys reading what they call the crack house statute, which is supposed to be the statute we're breaking, the law we're breaking. And I said, can you read this and tell me what it is that's illegal about an OPC? 6 months into it, we can't find it. So we will no longer say what we're doing is illegal. It is legal, right? If you look at the crack house statute, a part of it, do you guys know how it came to be? Did you see a movie called New Jack City? Yeah, that's how it happened. That's the genesis of the crack house statute. And the belief is that these black and brown folks are going to take over apartment complexes, right, and start selling drugs and cutting up drugs and take over the building and make it part of this system. And they created the crack house statute. And so we don't sell drugs. So that immediately eliminates us from that process. What we do is love people, beautiful people. When they ask me to talk about the people in the room, can you tell us about, they want demographics. I'm like, they're beautiful, they're uncles, they're aunts, right? They're really cool, they're groovy, they're fun, they're in pain, and we love them. OPCs are legal, OPCs are welcoming, OPCs are community, OPCs are safe. OPCs are keeping beautiful people alive. OPCs are legal. Any attorneys here want to battle me any day? I'm ready. OPCs are healthcare. OPCs are staffed by peers and professionals, some with lived and living experience. I just said that. The perception in our building is when people come in, they say when someone responds to an overdose, what is their degree? Their degree of what? Patience? They're really high degree of patience. Our staff are trained to respond to an overdose at the level of an RN. We've had over 125,000 utilizations in 2.5 years. Not even 2.5 years. Yeah. And what that means is 125,000 times, instead of people using in the street and in parks and in lobbies and in bathrooms, they used inside with us. We brought those people into our building. And the community said to me, so when we had our first meeting in the community, right, Britt, they were pissed off and they came in the room and they were going to yell at me and they gave me all these things. And I said, I'm confused because I responded to your request. I'm like, what do you mean? We didn't make a request for an OPC. I said, but you did. You said you didn't want public drug use. You said you didn't want paraphernalia in the street. You didn't want people dying in your community. You didn't want. So we responded and brought them inside to us. That's what we did. And so that was confusing for people, and it was a lot of fun to share that moment. But it's true. It really is true. There's a park across the street from one of our OPCs. This park has been closed for years. And if you ask anyone in the community or anyone in the parks department, they would say because of those drug users. So we opened the OPC in November. For the first time in 5-6 years, I believe, that summer, the park reopened. Across the street from the OPC. That summer, I walked over with the staff. We have these big windows, and I asked them to look in the park and take a moment to realize what they did. They were watching kids playing in the park. We opened that park, not because there were bad people in there. They needed a place to be, and we offered them that. We offered them a space for them to spend time and be away from madness and away from danger. We have respite rooms in our program, and I don't know if you ever notice, oftentimes women who are homeless will sleep during the day in a place where they can be seen because it's safe. You imagine what that is for her? She has to sleep during the day and sleep in a space where she could be seen. We open a respite room, they come in. They come in, they take a shower, they give us their clothes, we wash them. They don't wash them, we wash them. They go in this room, which is similar to what you guys have back here. If you haven't been in there, check it out. And they take a really good nap as long as they want. And then when we did something, Kaylin C., our senior director of programs, really she's always pushing the edge, pushing it all the way up. And so I go in the room and I'm like, this cot's kind of close, kind of really close. And so in the shelter system, if you're a couple, when you go in the shelter, you have to go to men's shelter, women's shelter, right? Separate if you're a heterosexual couple. And so when you come out, we allow the cots to be really close so you can kind of cuddle. Maybe throw your leg over. We have to monitor you. Don't get too comfortable. But we give you that intimacy a little bit. We have staff in the room. It ain't going down like that. But it's really this space and this opportunity for people to get well. And what we offer is wellness. What we do is really, harm reduction. All these organizations like to say, we meet people where they're at. Yeah, okay. If they do A, B, and C. Harm reduction is the epitome of meeting people where they're at. The epitome of it. Like people come in, they don't even understand no. One of the things I meant to say before, I'll say it very quickly. Can you imagine your participants who go from program to program? A lot of you do intakes, right? Collect information. Is any of that information fun for them to give? What did you use? How did you use it? Were you in prison? Negative. All this negative. Then you say to them, thank you very much. Go to the third floor and do it again. Well, I'm going to refer you to this other place and do it again. And they have to sit there and tell that story of pain over and over. So I ask you, if you happen to be one of those places, think about how you change that. But in addition to that, end it with something positive. Like let them have a different experience in that moment. Right? Everywhere our people go. Do you have your imagine women? Do you have your children? No, why not? Oh, again, I have to say this. Reliving that pain because you had to capture some data point, right? So we've had, as I said, over 125,000 utilizations. We've collected and disposed of over 2.5 million units of hazardous waste. So that means all of this hazardous waste that everybody is worried about being in the community, we disposed of it in the most healthiest way possible. We've had about 1,500 overdoses in our space. And Tony Smith, the DPA, always reminds me to be careful with this one. But all the time in OPCs, we use a number that's really powerful. OPCs have been around for over 37 years now, I believe. And one of the things we keep saying is we've had 0 deaths in an OPC. But Tony always reminds me to be careful with that. Who the hell measures their success by 0, right? It's dangerous because if we get 1, it's like, oh, you failed. You got 1. Let's go shut them down. That's it, send them in. But it's true, right? We have to be careful with that. But we are proud. We are proud. And we know that no one ever has to die of an overdose again. Ever. 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 No one should be judged for the drugs they use. Yeah. It's interesting to me. I was talking to a woman once. She was yelling at me, but I was talking. And it was really funny. So she was telling me about, like, I'm enabling drug use and I'm doing all this stuff. And then she said, you're not doing Jesus' work. And I was like, oh, shit, Jesus. So I said, I'm not a really religious person, but I kind of read the book when I was incarcerated. It's what you do. It's what we do. It's like, oh, Jesus, please, where are you, bro? Like, come on, man. Every religion they offered me, I was taking it. 1 foot, stand on the leg, whatever it worked, right? But I remember this part. If he was here, he'd be in the OPCs washing feet. How about that? How about that? Right? At least the brown Jesus I know, you guys like to people don't realize they've been, you take your photos now and you fix them up and you make yourself look like you're melting, like you really put those, they've been doing that for years because Jesus is not that white, folks. I just have to tell you. But yeah, so she's telling me that, and then she's telling me I'm enabling drugs. And I asked her, I said, do you take any medications? And yo was like, hey, right, hey. She went through a list of all these medications she takes. So I'm like, maybe you need an OPC. Maybe you should come check out our program. You know, before I wrap this up and I talk to my amazing Lindsay over here, I just, again, want to thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for the hat, man. I mean, I paid for it, but thank you anyway. This has been really, it's not over yet. I'm going to hang out. It's been a really beautiful experience. I hope that you hear what I'm saying in a loving way. I'm not judging you. If you could take a moment to just take it in, I'll share something really powerful that I'm still processing every day. So when I came home, I worked with this woman who was really cool, really loved her. She was a white woman and just seemed to have it together. Like, I don't know if you know, that's how we see white folks. Yeah, like black and brown people, we like, oh, you're white? Oh, life is great, isn't it? Right? Like, that's, like we just like, wow, you have blonde hair, man, life's great. And so that's what I was doing. I'm like, man, she's got it made. I thought her life was great. So one day she was leaving work early, and she said, I'm going to therapy. I'm like, therapy? So I don't know if you know this too. For black and brown people, we don't go to therapy. That's for crazy people, right? And so she's going to therapy, and I'm like, therapy? How? Like, you go to therapy? And she goes, yeah, twice a week. So she walked away, and I'm like, if she goes twice a week, behind me, I was like, dude, I'm way behind. I probably got 5 days a week, right? I need some therapy. But I share this to maybe share too much, but like now that my mom is where she is, I've been more open about this, and it's healing for me. I went to therapy, and the therapist said, we stood talk about a bunch of things, and then she asked, she didn't say, if you're a therapist, don't talk, please, just ask, don't talk. She asked, why were you in prison? And I said, well, I was involved with organized crime. And she goes, no. Why were you in prison? 28 cops came and surrounded my house. Like, what do you, huh? And she goes, no, what do you think led you to go to prison? Because the things I did prior to going to prison. By the way, don't get mad at me now, 17 years old, graduated high school, baseball scholarship, Oklahoma State University. Yeah, we came to play Texas, and I learned very quickly, you guys don't like each other. But I was a good kid. I did really well. I got hurt in school and came back home and then started hanging out with some different people. And what we noticed in my journey was like I put myself at risk for death in my time involved in organized crime and, of course, going to prison. And what she was trying to get me to understand is why. Like, what happened? How does that kid end up putting himself in a place where he's willing to die? And through work and through working with her very closely, I started to understand and embrace the fact that there was a time in my life as a kid where I couldn't defend myself, and I went through some major pain, which is what really took me to this different place in this work where I understand why and how people respond to their pain and their trauma. The fact that I was so angry at myself, and I'm blessed that I wasn't a person who used drugs in the way many of my friends and my family and our participants do, because I'm not sure I'd be here. But I hurt myself in different ways. I managed my trauma in different ways and realized that it wasn't that I was a bad person. It was that I did these things as responding to my traumatic experience. And so I think now as a big tough guy, I find it healthy to talk about this. So hopefully other men who are big tough guys feel safe enough to talk about these experiences too. Yeah. It's yet another opportunity to learn from our women. Women tend to be very strong and powerful for the most part, talking about their trauma. Men don't. Men haven't also been given, not that women have, but the opportunity to talk about it safely. And so I'm creating my own safety by talking about it, since I get a mic in my face pretty often these days. But it's a healing for me as well, to understand that my response to that pain is very real and it's okay. Last thing I'll say before I sit down is my crime or someone's drug use is not who they are. My crime is what I did, it's not who I am. Right? So I'm not a big fan of language, we call people you're a drug user. You're a person who uses drugs, and you do a bunch of other things too, right? We have to look at that. Language really hurts and could be really, it can also be impactful in a positive way. So I don't allow those things to define me. And I'll say this, David Rothenberg is my mentor, 90 years old, amazing man. And he would also always tell me this. He said, the fact that we define ourselves like, yeah, I'm a felon, or I'm a drug user. Can you imagine that every time you introduce yourself to someone, you told them the worst thing you ever did in your life? How you doing? I was a bedwetter at 6 years old, right? And he asked a reporter, because the reporter was interviewing me, so I want to know what he did. He goes, sure, if you write Joe whatever reporter, bedwetter, 1987, right? Something like that. So thank you very much. Thank you. Pleasure. Yeah. Thank you. Wow. Man. All right. All right. Well, don't make me cry now. Shit.
Thank you so much, Sam. I just have a few questions for you in response to that opening presentation, and then after I get through some questions, we'll open it up to questions from the audience. So the first thing for me that comes to mind that I think might also be on the minds of our audience are, what are some of the things that led to success for you while becoming the first sanctioned OPC?
Yeah, a little bit of craziness, a lot of courage. Not surprising for harm reductionists. Like, we're out there, man. Like, we are out there. But having, we were blessed to have Kaylin, our senior director of programs, ran OPCs in Canada. So we had a really huge head start in that way. We were blessed to have the space in the moment. I mean, it took a lot of work. Can you imagine announcing to your staff that you're opening an OPC and 100% of them cry in joy? It's still beautiful to reflect on. Our relationships we had to build, it was a battle. It wasn't easy. It was very challenging. In fact, we had someone filming this whole thing. So in a few years, you'll get to see the documentary. It's going to be pretty powerful. Colin Askey is the one who shot it. And I can't wait to see, how many nights of arguing with and yelling at the mayor and all that fun stuff. But yeah, it took a lot of work. And then learning that what we're doing is legal helps a lot too.
A lot of relationships.
A lot, yeah. Some interesting ones.
Oh, along the lines of interesting ones. Can you tell us about OnPoint's relationship with your local law enforcement?
Sure.
Well, you heard my experience with law enforcement. It was very interesting. It's interesting to discuss. So when we were opening, we were worried about law enforcement in the two neighborhoods we're in. And so we had a number of meetings with NYPD. They didn't really go well at first. We were asking for too much, but that was okay too. We want all police to leave us alone. And they're like, all police? Like, hell yeah, all police. Like, well, why don't we talk about the two precincts where you're working? And it was challenging. It was interesting. We put on the table what we needed. We told them it's going to make your job different. They didn't believe it. Our staff went and conducted presentations at their roll call and touched fentanyl, and no one died. That was very interesting. They all ran out the room. Everybody was fine. But yeah, going into their space, talking to them, and then we asked them to be honest about what they experienced after we opened. The fact that they're no longer going to arrest people for using drugs. They're not going to arrest anyone coming into the building who knowingly has drugs. That was a big change for them and a challenge. And I'm not sure that many of the police on the ground necessarily agreed at first, but once we got their bosses to agree, it was interesting. Even more interesting, the first day we opened, there were a lot of police around. We're like, you guys got to get out of here. Like, people don't want to come in. And they were there, they thought there were going to be protests, and they really weren't. Well, there was one protest. It was 3 women and a dog, and we fed the dog. And that was it. But anyway, yeah, back to this, it's interesting. I will say, and I say it, and people have a hard time with it, but I speak truth, man. It's one of the best relationships we have with the NYPD in those 2 precincts. Have we had issues? Of course. Have they been addressed? Yes. It's powerful and different, and it should be the model people are looking at around the country to work differently with people, right? So we would read what the police said their job is. We read it back and talk about how they're not doing, or they're doing very little. But today we have a relationship that's understandable. I've been coming to work. I see an officer walking with our participant. I jump out, say, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm escorting him to OnPoint." That's powerful. That's beautiful. They also asked us to create these cards because, of course, when police go up to someone who's using drugs or anyone in the street, people get nervous. And they asked us to create these cards that introduced them and said they're part of our team. They want to bring them over to us. I know it's different. Believe me, I've been in some jurisdictions where I can't imagine, LA. Did I say that? I can't imagine this kind of relationship. I hope it changes. But I guess I used to say the same thing about New York. So Chief Tobin, love you, love you. She's an amazing person and was willing to take the risk with us. So pretty cool.
That's really beautiful. And that, you've mentioned throughout your presentation love, and that's something that Lucas and I definitely felt when we got to spend time with you and Brittany and everyone at OnPoint. And I remember Lucas and I, it was kind of the end of our tour, and 2 police officers walked in, and I think Lucas and I were kind of like, oh, like, what's going on here? And then they did handshakes, and we're hugging each other, and that message of love really was seen throughout everyone who was in the OPC, and that was a really beautiful thing to get to be part of.
Yeah, that was rare, but it happened. It's good. It's a lot. It takes a lot, and creating that space. It's a small piece, but again, I hope that people are able to. We have police officers in our 2 locations who have been talking to police in other areas about their ability to do this differently and the benefits of it. So far, so good. That's great. Yeah.
The next thing I want to highlight is we've got some jewelry on.
Yeah, man.
Can you tell us the significance of the earrings that we're wearing and that some of our attendees are wearing?
Yeah, so these earrings are naloxone, which we use to sometimes, very careful here, we use to reverse an overdose in the OPC. So these we use in saving a life. So when you wear these, you're wearing 2 souls. It's a beautiful thing. And it's interesting, in our OPC, I think I said 1,500 overdose interventions. We're only using naloxone 20% of the time. 18% of the time. See, Britt's yelling at me already. 18% of the time. So the belief that you have to use Narcan or naloxone right away just isn't true. We have an oxygen protocol that comes into play right away. In fact, our outreach and public safety team, who are amazing as well, travel in their vehicles with oxygen now because we want to do everything. Remember, when there's an overdose, you want to remove enough of the opioid off the brain for them to breathe and be healthy. So the response is to measure their oxygen level, measure their heart rate, and then start the magic. And the magic is the love that our staff give and agitation, and someone's waiting with that 0.4 milligram. 0.4, not even a full. So average naloxone is 4 milligrams, 0.4. Respecting that person's moment, respecting the fact that we want to do this in the healthiest way possible, and it's just amazing. So if you have these on, you're wearing two beautiful souls. So, yeah.
My last templated question, I believe we have a slide, and I just you've touched on the resources that are available at OnPoint, but I really just wanted to have that visible for everyone to be able to see. And I won't read all of these off, but I know seeing the holistic approach that you all have at OnPoint was just an amazing resource for people, and a safe space for participants to come to. The laundry services that you mentioned, meals, especially the community space, people hanging out, arguing about Will Smith, and just having a space to have connection and people not being alone. And then the beautiful garden that you all have and the patio and all of these other services that you all offer. Is there anything else that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, I mean, I look at this and it's the Overdose Prevention Center is one program. It's not who we are. It's one program. We offer all of these other services. How we got here was literally having a gaps analysis, talking to participants. What's missing for you? What can we do to make your experience better? Well, we know in this process of people either, if they choose to reduce their use or stop, it sometimes takes a different experience for them. So we have people who go into our holistic health program and are getting acupuncture. Can you imagine overdosing, having something to eat, and then having an acupuncture treatment? For real, right? In a spa, like our place is like a spa. That's the process for our people, sitting in the garden. When we don't talk enough about overamps. We have a lot of overamps, and when we have an overamp, we take them to the garden and we give them that space, and it's a very different response to an overdose. We have to be careful not to also represent those folks. But our services, when we created this, we were sitting in my office. It was like a fun experience. And it's like we have all of these services, and too many people only want to talk about the OPC. But these are all the services we offer, more to come, opening a barbershop and a salon, and giving people the experience of what it feels like to be seen again and be as beautiful as they are.
Thank you so much, Sam.
We'd now love to take any questions from the audience, both in person and virtual. As a reminder, line up at either microphone, and when it's your turn, please state your name, your organization, where you're from, and then a concise question, please. And if you have more than one question, please move to the back of the line so that another person can have a chance.
And please ask a question. Don't tell me about how great your program is.
Am I first?
Yeah, I'm Van King. I'm the Be Well Medical Director, San Antonio. Well, I don't really have a question, but I have to say, at the risk of standing up here feeling conspicuously old and white, that this is the most compelling talk that I've heard for this kind of treatment, and I have to tell you, I feel convinced. Wow. So this has been a real education for me. I can't say I haven't heard some of this before, or maybe even a lot of it, but things sort of congealed for me today. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Miadi, Daka, Afro-Taino. I am so happy to see you, Sam, and thank you, Britt, as well, for being willing to work with us. My name's Sarah Chavez. I'm from the Rio Grande Valley Harm Reduction Team, and my question is, could you just speak a little bit about Indigenous harm reduction? Because that's what we are trying to do in our community, right? We are Indigenous-led. That is important to us, and no matter what, I'll see you at the conference, the Indigenous Harm Reduction Conference, the SARS. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Hahom, Taino sister in Texas, not bad. Yeah, so, it is important. My indigenous side is really what changed me in this work. We just move differently. And I ask you to embrace that. We do. We move in, if you watch Reservation Dogs, that's cool. It's like, but a lot of that's true. But at the same time, we really have these beautiful people that treat people in a very different way. So when we look at processes, we look at them differently through a very different lens. We see people for who they are in that pain. We honor women in a very different way, right? Grandmother Moon and Mother Earth. Nothing happens without women. Nothing grows without them. All of those traditions we have are powerful in this work. So if you have a chance to interview and hire an indigenous person, too many of our folks are indigenous and don't know it, and that's also another thing. If you were born in Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, any of those Caribbean islands, you're not what they tell you. You're Taino, right? That's who we are. You're not, a Puerto Rican or whatever those other things are. That's what was given to us. That's not who we are. We were the first people who were too nice and met this guy named Columbus, and who just diseased all of us and screwed us up. But really trying to learn who you are as indigenous people and understand why we move in a certain way. We're also oftentimes too forgiving, but we're working on that as well. But yeah, it's important. Actually, I'm going to Vienna in a few weeks to work with the International Indigenous Policy Alliance to speak to the UN out there and literally showing up as indigenous folks in this work.
Thank you. Hey, and Taínos, we are always resisting, but we're always hacerlo con tanto amor, Yeah.
Claro.
Lucas, you have a question? Okay, 5 minutes. All right.
5 minutes.
Hi, Sam.
Hi, Paulette.
Thank you so much for being here. So good to have you in Britton, Texas. My name is Paulette Soltani. I'm the co-director of an organization called Vocal Texas. And my question is around the role of organizing and political advocacy in the harm reduction movement. And I ask this because, as everybody knows, we don't have authorized syringe service programs. We just saw the drug-induced homicide law passed last session here in Texas, and there's just, the opioid settlement funds are being used on things that for policing. And so I wanted to ask, what lessons can we bring to Texas where politics are so far right and anti-human, and where people in spaces like this one are often afraid to rock the boat for many good reasons, but when we know we need to be rocking the boat and we need to be pushing harder to change laws and to call out injustices?
Yes, thank you. I want to be very clear. We probably don't open if it's not for Vocal New York. Be very clear. Part of what, we have to have advocacy. We have to. We're not represented the way we should be. I was just in Albany 3 times just last month. We have to hold both sides. We don't, we're also oftentimes overlooked. We have to show up and remind people who we are. We have politicians making medical decisions. Just hold that for a second, right? We also happen to work, everyone in this room happens to work in a field where people who don't know anything we're doing are experts, right? Like they always tell me what I should do with participants. I'm like, what do you do? I'm a plumber. All right, I'm gonna go to your job and I'm gonna tell you how to fix it. It's, so yes, it's not only important that we maintain that, Paulette, but it's also important that we remember and remind people we don't open without advocacy. It would never have happened. And what we want to do is start looking at how does it change? How do we not only do this in New York, but how do we do it in Texas, right? And we can't celebrate. I remember Joe Biden said harm reduction, and I got all these texts, wow, and I'm like, he's 20 years late, 30 years late. Why are we celebrating this shit, right? It's not, we're celebrating things that are this small when we need victories this big, right? It's not okay. But yeah, and I'm gonna tell you folks, Vocal Texas shows up. Listen to them, man. They're coming from some real pain and passion. And believe me, again, I'll tell you, I'm a kid grew up in ACT UP. You didn't want to see me back then. I would have ran you over. right? Like it's a very different, very important element to the work. And you know what, Paulette, I have to tell you, even in New York, the money's not going where it should be. New York has the only 2 overdose prevention centers in the country, and our governor refuses to give us opioid settlement fund dollars that are for people, right, who use opioids, right? And that money is unrestricted funds. So you as the state you don't get the opportunity to move this money how you wish. You honor those who did the work to get you this money and place it where it belongs. So, yes.
Thank you so much.
All right, I think unfortunately that is time. But
I'll be around.
Sam will be around. So if you all have any questions, he'll be here. Sam, I can't thank you enough for coming here.
Is this how you do it?
That's how you do it. Thank you, Sam.